everyone. Welcome. It's so great to see you tonight on our Where ACE Takes You event with a specific focus on further graduate studies. And we have some wonderful ACE graduates who are joining us from across the country tonight to share their experiences. Just want to give you a little bit of a sense for our framework. We will begin with some introductions so our panel can share a bit about themselves, where they taught through ACE, and what they're up to now. And then I will share just a couple of questions with them. And then we'll transition to live Q&A from all of you. So anything that you'd like to ask our panel, once we get there, I'll share some instructions on the best way to do so. The only other thing that I'll mention is it will be helpful to keep your screen in speaker view so that you're able to see everyone as they share their experiences and insights, and just to remain muted until we get to the live Q&A portion. So with that, I will invite our panelists to begin. Brendan, would you mind starting us off and just sharing a little bit about yourself and your ACE experience and what you're up to now?
Sure. So great to see you all. My name is Brendan Bell. I'm originally from outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and graduated from Notre Dame and did ACE in Sacramento, California. I taught high school social studies at Cristo Rey, Sacramento, and worked for a few more years after that. And now I am at law school at the University of Pennsylvania. So I just started there this fall.
Great. And other folks can just kind of jump in and share a bit about themselves as well.
Sure, I'll go next. My name is Mcdermott, and I am an ACE 18 grad, which feels like a really long time ago now. I am in my fourth year in a doctoral program here at the University of Michigan. So I am just moving into the dissertation phase this year. So I've moved from middle school social studies in Corpus Christi to middle school social studies in Chicago, and now teacher education, focusing on secondary history, social science instruction at the higher education level. Nice to be with you all tonight.
I can go next. My name is Rosenkrantz, and I did ACE in Chicago. I taught high school English. Before that, I'm from Oklahoma, grew up in Oklahoma, and went to Oklahoma State for undergrad. And then after my ACE experience, I got another master's degree in clinical counseling, and now I'm in my first year of a PhD program in counseling psychology at OSU.
Hi guys, I'm Elizabeth Charles. I did ACE with Anne. We were actually roommates. So look, maybe someday you'll be on one of these panels with your ACE roommates, but hopefully in person. But I was also ACE 23. I did ACE in LA. I taught second grade there for 2 years with ACE. And then I actually stayed at my ACE school for 2 more years. So taught second grade in LA for 4 years. And I'm also in my first year of law school now at Northwestern.
I think that just leaves me. I'm Patrick Shields, originally from outside Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I went to Notre Dame for undergrad, and then I was in ACE 25. So during ACE, I taught high school physics at Tampa Catholic High School in Tampa, Florida. Yeah, had a really great experience during ACE, and then I am now in my first year of my PhD back at Notre Dame in the history and philosophy of science.
Great. Thank you all so much for sharing a bit about yourselves. To start off our conversation, I really want to focus more specifically on your path to ACE. Very often students will ask, why did you say yes to this program? What led you to these 2 years? So maybe if you could share a little bit about that experience for you, what were the things that really stood out about ACE, and why did you ultimately say yes to the experience?
I can go first. That's okay. So for me, I have to be honest, ACE wasn't really on my radar until maybe my junior year of college. But I started to bump into people on campus and in different ways in classes and just in conversations with people who were familiar with ACE or who were in ACE. And quite honestly, I just really liked those people, and I thought that I wanted to be whatever they were doing, I thought that was something that I wanted to be a part of. Like I felt like they were receiving a formative experience. So I realized, whether I stayed in teaching afterwards or left the classroom, I realized that the community aspect and the spiritual component and just being part of something that would surround you with other really good people and kind of form you was something that was most attractive to me. And I found myself loving it. But that was really why I first said yes to ACE, why I applied and said yes to the ACE ultimately.
Yeah, so just to hop on that, kind of similar experience, I think. I heard about ACE during my time in undergrad, mostly kind of anecdotally through people I knew. Though I think at one point there was a presentation that someone gave to all the sophomore physics majors that also piqued my interest. So I've always been kind of interested in teaching, but for the most part, I thought that that would be something that, eventually, maybe if I went on to get my PhD, that'd be something I'd do as like a professor or something. Who knows? So I had that interest, but yeah, I also sang in folk choir and was involved in other kind of clubs and activities on campus that I think overlapped a lot with ACE and people who did ACE. Um, so it was kind of like in the air a little bit. I also spent a few summers on campus doing research for various things, but at some point it moved beyond that, and I actually, got in contact with people who were either in the ACE office or who had done ACE. People like Mike and Bridget, and eventually I just I realized that I really looked up to all these people, and kind of like what Brendan was saying, I thought like, wow, I want to do that. I want to be like that. And it was kind of like a vague, undefined desire, I guess, but through a lot of prayer and talks with parents and lots of different people, um, eventually I decided to apply to be an intern, and the rest is history.
So I think my experience represents a different path. That in that I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. You go back to my like second grade All About Me poster. It says I want to be a teacher, and that was true all the way through. It just changed what grade level I wanted to teach until I got stuck in middle school, and never wanted to leave. But I applied to Notre Dame. I went to Notre Dame undergrad, knowing that Notre Dame didn't have a school of education, knowing that the St. Mary's option was there, but I wasn't. I just wanted to. If I was picking a school, I wanted to go to that school, and so I ended up choosing between Notre Dame or Illinois Wesleyan, which has a fantastic education program, and like all of my high school social studies teachers were Illinois Wesleyan grads, so that seemed like a good option. I ended up choosing to go to Notre Dame, but really it was super important that I already knew about the ACE program going in, because like that was my plan then. Was I was going to go through undergrad, then I was going to do ACE, and if I couldn't get into ACE, then I was going to do some other comparable program, and that was going to be my path to teaching. So I didn't stumble across it. It was very much an intentional part of my plan. That being said, it wasn't the only alternative route that I selected, and or that I applied to. And the reason I ended up choosing ACE as my first choice was sort of, now it's similar to Brendan and Patrick, like that community of support that I didn't feel like I was going to get in any of the other programs I was looking at.
I'll kind of hop on after Megan. I was very different in that I really had no idea what I wanted to do. And I was an English major. So, it doesn't necessarily like lend itself to this super linear career path. So I also went to Notre Dame undergrad and kind of like had different ideas of things I wanted to do, but was really uncertain about like, okay, like what am I going to do when I graduate from college? And I wanted to do something that was service related when I graduated. So I looked at like JVC. Notre Dame also has a program called ECHO, which some of you might have heard of, which is like more theology based. Thought about ACE. And some things that really made me choose ACE in the end are, number one, you also, I mean, the community is amazing. All that was a big factor, but also you get a master's degree. So I'm not sure if all of you guys know that, but you get your master's degree in education, obviously, as you're going through the program, which is very different than a lot of other service teaching programs. You don't necessarily get your master's degree as you're going through it. Um, and also that it's a lot smaller than a lot of other service programs. So you have a lot more support, like some more kind of like larger service programs, like even some friends who did JVC, right? That is a little bit more sectioned off. So you might be close with like the section or geographical area that you're in, but you don't have this kind of like national community like we do in ACE, right? There's communities all over the country and you guys all spend the summer together, and like you also get to go on retreats together and really have friends that are completely spread out. And so I really like that idea of having both the smaller community, the community that you're living with and spending those 2 years with, but also having this larger community of acers, of the hundred some acers in your class, um, and kind of having that community of friends everywhere. It was really great.
I'll hop on after my former roomie. But I did not go to Notre Dame undergrad, but I majored at OSU in journalism, and I had minors in psychology and English and Spanish, which just kind of similar to what Elizabeth just shared. I didn't know what I wanted to do with that. I was interested in a lot of things academically, but I wasn't really sure what that path looked like going forward. I was drawn to a lot of service oriented programs with youth. So I know I loved working with kids. And I actually, working at a summer camp, heard from a friend of mine who's a seminarian, who actually had ACE teachers in Oklahoma growing up, about the ACE program. So kind of an untraditional way to hear about it. But he told me about it and I was just really drawn to the idea. Did a lot of research as a sophomore. Pretty sure I reached out to a recruiter then and said, like, I'm really interested. Like, how do I make myself a good applicant? And I'm sure he thought, like, who is this sophomore emailing me? But I was just really interested in this program because it seemed like a formative experience academically, but also personally. And I was drawn to that too. That it was going to be academically formative and challenging, and there was that master's degree component, but also that it was service oriented, and I felt like it tied together so many things that I cared about: faith and working with kids, and also academia. So I was elated when I when I got in.
Thank you all so much for sharing those insights. And so now we kind of want to switch gears a little bit and focus on your path beyond ACE, because obviously you're all doing very different things. And so would be curious for you to share a bit about how your ACE experience maybe impacted or informed your decision to pursue your current area of study and degree program, or if there are parts of your ACE experience that continue to impact what you're studying and what you're researching. So maybe if you could just share a little bit of what was that discernment like beyond ACE, and how did you end up in the current program that you're in?
Yeah, so I guess I can do this one first. So as I kind of alluded to previously, I'd been planning on pursuing a PhD since undergrad, probably. Though originally I was planning on doing it in physics. I actually added a second major in philosophy somewhat late in the game in undergrad, but really came to appreciate a lot of work being done in the philosophy of physics. So I ended up applying to physics and philosophy programs during my second year of ACE. Um, I was blessed to have a choice to make, but it ended up that the program here, History and Philosophy of Science program here at Notre Dame, really fit my interests well, and I really love it so far. As for how that kind of relates to my experience in ACE, um, well, first of all, I guess interestingly, there's some areas of overlap between the philosophy of science and science education, which are really interesting. I'm actually taking part in a reading group right now with some people in my department that's kind of centered around the history of science education in the U.S. So there's kind of these fun little areas of overlap that I get. But more generally, I think just being an ACE prepared me in a number of ways to be a better PhD student and just student in general. I mean, I have some teaching experience under my belt, so while I haven't been a TA yet, they don't have us be TAs for our first year, which is really nice. I'm looking forward to getting back in the classroom, and I'm sure that that'll be, a big boon to my experience here. Beyond the like explicit teaching background, I do think that just being a teacher helped me to grow a lot in like organizational skills, communication skills, all kinds of things like that. There's all kinds of kind of auxiliary skills that you pick up um, along the way. And even more than that, I think that just being an ace gave me some perspective on kind of how to live a more well balanced life in some ways. So I feel that it's maybe a common experience for teachers, especially like teachers in their first or second year, to kind of feel like, oh, whenever I'm not teaching, I need to be like preparing to teach. I need to be lesson planning and getting assessments ready and things like that. Um, and I think a big part of my ACE experience was like kind of loosening up a little bit and realizing I do need to take time away from doing work and just finding like that proper work-life balance. And in a similar way, I mean, it looks a little different in a PhD, but the stresses are different, but it's I think a similar intensity maybe. And so yeah, the work to establish a meaningful work life balance had already been done in a certain sense, and so I came in with a little bit of a different perspective than I might have otherwise, which I think was really helpful.
I can hop on. So Patrick was saying how he knew he wanted to apply for a PhD before ACE. I absolutely 0% knew that I wanted to go to law school before doing ACE, as goes with the theme. Um, but when thinking about like, okay, how did my ACE experience affect me being in law school now, wanting to be a lawyer? I like absolutely wouldn't be here if I hadn't done ACE, right? Like what made me want to be a lawyer was my ACE experience. So not all ACE schools, but many ACE schools are located in low income areas, low resource communities throughout the United States, either urban communities, rural communities, right? And I was teaching in LA for all 4 years, same school, like I said, and it was a mostly Central American immigrant community, very low socioeconomic, and I just became really affected by all of these issues that these families had, like so many immigration issues. Housing issues is a big issue in LA, and affordable housing, healthcare, working with DCFS, going to IEP meetings all the time, and it was really my work with these families, with my students, with my school community in ACE that made me think, okay, like I love my kids. I love the families. I like love getting to serve them in this way. Um, but I didn't necessarily see myself teaching long term. Even though like I loved my 4 years, I was kind of ready to move into something else professionally. Um, and it was my time with them that sparked this passion and made me think, okay, how can I keep working with families like in a similar situation to the families of my students, right? And that was what started me talking to lawyers, looking into law school, and now being a first year law student. But I was talking to Father Joe Capora, who some of you might know if you're at Notre Dame, but he's a priest that works with ACE. And he was like asking me a similar question, like, okay, how much of you wanting to be a lawyer is affected by your ACE experience? It's like, well, like all of it, right? Because 0% of me wanted to be a lawyer before ACE, and here I am now. So, just completely. And I was talking to one of my fellow law students, kind of like telling her this same spiel, right, about my students and my families, why I'm in law school. And she said to me, she was like, wow, like I really wish I cared about something so much. And I think that that is something that ACE gives you, right? Is like, I feel like so many of my fellow ACE classmates, after the ACE experience, even if it's not necessarily that they have this huge passion for teaching, maybe it showed them a passion for higher education, right? Or a passion for working with the mental health and emotional needs of their students, right? Or a passion for working in policy or law or Catholic education or whatever. But I do really think that your ACE experience can open those doors for you and really show you, okay, what is it that you care about most? And like, how do you want to spend the rest of your life working towards that?
Yeah, my experience overlaps pretty significantly with that one. Again, I didn't really know what I wanted to do going into ACE, but I worked in Chicago at an all girls high school. Pretty, it was very small, and so you really formed tight relationships with your students and with other teachers. Kind of informal in that way. But a lot of the families, similar to what Elizabeth was saying, were low SES. It was a minority majority school. And I just became really aware of the challenges facing marginalized groups in a way that I had in theory, but not so much in my like really seeing the plight of these families and the struggles that are facing them, because you become really aware of the challenges that your students are facing and their families are facing as a teacher. Really aware. And so I love teaching. I thought about continuing to teach. If I could have stayed at my ACE school, I think I would have, but I had to move to get married, right? Like compromise. But I think that I just realized that in my heart, what I cared about most was social emotional learning, um, social justice, teaching kids coping skills, right? Like, again, just that social emotional learning that I viewed as really fundamental. And the lack of that can really serve as a barrier to academic learning in the classroom. And so I, again, did a master's degree in clinical counseling and thought I might stop there and return to a school setting as a school counselor, but then decided that I really wanted to pursue it a little further and get my PhD as a counseling psychologist. But again, like I would not be here if not for my ACE experience. Hugely formative in showing me what I really cared about and how I could use my talents and my skills to like serve in a critical way. So. Mm-hmm.
I can jump in. Yeah, for me, it was really ACE will ignite a passion for Catholic education in you, like undoubtedly. And I was also really interested in public policy, um, and was always thinking about that as well. And so I think ACE kind of brought that second component to the table for me. And I started considering, what would give me the tools to really, work and, affect and drive change at the intersection of public policy and Catholic education, questions around school choice, um, Catholic schools. And so I will just add one other thing, kind of the second part of Bridget's question, where, you know, ACE gives you so many mentors and folks that really can support you as you go on throughout your career. And so that was something I really want to highlight, like talking with folks during ACE, but also after ACE, who were great mentors and advisors for me when I was thinking about graduate school. And then, finally, I would just say it absolutely prepares you for graduate school in a lot of the ways I believe Patrick was mentioning, where it's just a lot of the perspective and grounding that you have. And also just if you can run a classroom and be organized in that way, graduate school is really not too bad. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, so I told you earlier that I got stuck in middle school and never wanted to leave, and that remains true today. I still feel a lot of internal tension between my job that I have and really just wanting to be back in a middle school classroom with my kids. It was a very, very difficult decision for me to leave school. I actually I got the news that I had been accepted into my PhD program on a Friday morning, right as we were heading over to school mass. And I cried this whole 60 minutes, just like tears streaming down my face. No student noticed because, they didn't care. I went over to one of my coworkers and said, like, you're going to see me like lose everything right now, and I'm fine, just like so fine. After mass, I walked into another colleague's room and literally threw my school laptop on her desk and was like, I don't know what to do with this information, like I think I have to go, but I don't want to leave. So luckily I'm in this situation where my doctoral work is on teacher education. So I've taught every semester for the 4 years that this is the start of my 4th year that I've been in this program. There's never been a time where I'm not teaching. My students are a little older, but they have just as many challenges and just as much need for great instructors as middle school kids did. So I'm really lucky there. And I'll echo Brendan's point about the network, because that's really how all of this connects back to ACE for me, is that a few years after I graduated from ACE, one of the ACE instructors reached out to me and asked if I would be interested in helping him lead the secondary history social science methods course. And I said, sure, that sounds great. And he was the one who then a year later said, I think that this is what you should do. I think you should apply to grad school and start a doctoral program. And I said, okay, like you're not going to lead me astray, so I'll do it. And then he was the one who said, I'm stepping back from this class to take on some other responsibilities. Can you step up and take over the history social science methods course for ACE? So I actually am an instructor for ACE, which I don't think I mentioned earlier. And once again, I said yes, and I'm back very much a part of the wonderful people that Brendan and Patrick and others said they just wanted to be with those people coming into the program. Those people don't go away when you leave. As of next summer, it will be 10 years since I started as an ACE teacher, and I am very much, connected to the network, obviously as an instructor, but also just as part of the incredible ACE Advocates Network. And there are people all over this country who want to support you as an ACE alum.
Right, so I want to just wrap up with one final question. Obviously, a lot of students on the call are currently in the process of discerning ACE and trying to figure out if this is something that they want to apply to and potentially commit to. If you have any kind of words of advice, things that you did that were really helpful, other suggestions, just to close out our time, we'd love to hear those insights.
I would say that put ACE at the top of your list. It's a really amazing opportunity, and if this hasn't convinced you that it'll set you up well for a future path, sort of regardless of what that path is, then keep coming back to these calls. I will also say that if any of you happen to be in education programs in undergrad, I work with students at Michigan who are seniors in college who are finishing up an ed degree, and we talk a lot about is it worth it for them to go on and do a program like ACE or even ACE itself. And their question is, well, I just took a bunch of classes on education, like what is ACE going to give me that isn't something I've already done? And my answer is do you think right now that you're going to be an A+, no mistakes made teacher when you start in the fall? Because an extra 2 years of support and learning and opportunity to sort of rethink, your teaching seems like a great thing at the start of your career. So if anyone's in that situation, I don't think that should be a reason to turn this opportunity down.
Just to add on to that, I think 2 things that were really helpful for me. For one thing, just pray about it. I think it's a really big decision, and if this is really for you, then you're going to want the Lord's input and guidance for that. Secondly, I just talk to people about it. For me, I talk to my friends about it. I talk to people on ACE staff about it. I talk to my parents. just talking to others about this is what really helped me kind of refine why I want to do this, like what do I want to get out of this, but also like what do I want to put into this, and just figure out why it is that I wanted to be here and why I felt called to do ACE. So those are just two other little tidbits.
I would echo that and just say that ACE staff was amazing for me in answering all of my questions, even if you're not coming from Notre Dame and not as familiar with the program already. And just like any question, they were super helpful. And I know a lot of the people on the ACE staff, just like amazing, lovely people. But then I would also just say, just do ACE, because it's the best experience. Just again academically, but also just like the friendships and the adventure of just displacement. Just an incredible opportunity.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. I'll also say that something that was helpful for me was thinking about like where I wanted to be in 15 or 20 years as opposed to like just 1 year or 2 years out of college. And I thought, would I want to look back and say that I did this kind of program? And the answer was 100% yes. And I think when you take the big picture view, you can see people have all kinds of experiences. Everyone turns out, uh, you know, loving what they're doing, whether it's in the classroom or in a PhD program, you name it. Um, but the one consistent thing and the common denominator is people deeply value what they've had in ACE in the 2 years in the community that they've been a part of. So it's absolutely worth it. And yeah, just continue to talk to people at all different stages in it, but also years out, and they can really give you a clear perspective with a lot of hindsight.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We hope this was helpful as you continue to think about ACE. I know we're all muted, but if you would join me in thanking our panelists, maybe with one of the fun new emojis that Zoom has enabled. But just really appreciate you all giving up your time to be here and to reminisce about your ACE experiences. We hope that you will consider joining us next week for ACE Night. We will have more graduates sharing their experiences. You'll be able to hear from current teachers and even some students. It should be a really fun night to experience the ACE community. So hope to see you there. It'll be Wednesday night at 8 p.m. on Zoom. So thank you all so much, and have a great rest of your night.